Tonight on Global National. Aftermath of a disaster. As they mourn in Lac-Megantic, questions linger over how the tanker cars ever broke free.
They've confirmed that everything was okay, that we could leave. Yes, the train was supposed to be secure.
Too slow, too low.
Oh my God! Oh, it's an accident.
The terrifying last seconds of the San Francisco crash and new information about who was at the controls. Plus, Iceberg Alley.
There is definitely 3 to 4 times greater amount of icebergs.
How an amazing spectacle becomes a town's saving grace.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight in Quebec, where the painstaking search is underway for victims of that devastating derailment and fire. It was so ferocious, parts of the town of Lac-Megantic were incinerated. And more than 2 days since it happened, it is still not clear how many people died, nor is it clear why 72 tanker cars loaded with crude oil broke loose and hurtled down the tracks into town. 13 people are now confirmed dead. Dozens of others are still missing. The epicenter is downtown. This is what it looked like before, and this is it now. The building's simply gone, including a bar that was popular with young people, and that's where investigators fear they will find more victims. Our coverage tonight begins with Mike LeCouteur. Mike?
Well, Donna, the anguish has been so tough to take for so many people in this town. While there are some that have very faint hope, many of them are now facing the fact and a very grim reality. Unable to keep it together any longer, Raymond Lafontaine says he cried for almost no reason last night. He lost his son Gaetan and 2 daughters-in-law early Saturday morning as the derailment and fire wiped out most of the downtown area. Officials haven't confirmed their deaths yet, but he knows. We're not idiots, he says. We know they're gone. Gaetan and the others were at the Musique Cafe, ground zero for this massive tragedy. The bar had just been renovated and was a popular hangout for locals and tourists alike. Waitress Karine Blanchette was supposed to work that night, and amazingly, most of her friends got out. Her thoughts now are on the future.
The worst is coming because we don't see the town, and I hope people will come in to help us to rebuild. I'm sorry.
Musique Cafe is where forensic investigators will likely concentrate efforts in the coming days, but it won't be easy. Any remains they find will have to be identified with DNA.
Ça va être un travail qui va être long.
It'll be a long process, Guillemot admits, as many who have visited the scene describe it as a war zone. Back at the Red Cross, help is available for those who still haven't found their loved ones. Now, there aren't a lot of answers, but there is support.
To be there with them at that moment is so important. You may not say even one word, but to have a hand to touch, a shoulder to cry on is so important.
Raymond Lafontaine hasn't sought help just yet, but he knows he has to be strong for his family, focusing on what little good news is left. I almost lost it all, he says. Fortunately, the good Lord let me keep our other kids. Now, the coroner told us that normally they try and ID bodies through dental records. That's going to be more difficult this time. One of the dental clinics in this town was right downtown, and it has been completely leveled. Donna?
Such a difficult time. Mike LeCouteur, thanks. There are so many unanswered questions tonight about how this happened, how a driverless train filled with crude managed to roll out of control down a hill, and whether safety precautions that should have been followed were not. Mike Armstrong has been following the investigation for us. Mike?
Well, Donna, the derailment happened behind me just down this hill, and obviously a big part of the investigation is there. But whatever went wrong, whatever caused this train to run away, happened up the tracks. Quebec Provincial Police have more than 50 investigators on site. The Transportation Safety Board, another 9 experts. They are 2 parallel investigations. but a part of both. We'll focus on an incident before the runaway train hit the town and flames turned night into daylight. The same train had a fire on a locomotive about 2 hours before it became a runaway 14 kilometers up the track. This photo was snapped by a passerby. The call for that fire went to the town of Nantes and Chief Patrick Lambert.
The fire was located in the engine compartment of the lead locomotive.
Now, what happened in extinguishing the fire may have been a big part of the problem. In the rail company's statement yesterday, MMA said shutting down the locomotive's idling engine may have led to the release of the air brakes. Lambert says shutting down the engine was standard protocol.
It's the way you have no choice. To stop an engine fire, you have to stop the engine. You have to turn the engine down. Because the engine, it's the fuel coming that goes to the engine, that's what's making the fire go.
Now, firefighters left the train after about 45 minutes. The fire was out, and MMA officials, they say, were on the scene.
They came, they looked at it, over, we inspected the engine, everything was okay, everything was out. They confirmed that everything was okay, that we could leave. Yes, the train was supposed to be secure.
Well, it would appear the train was not secure. The call for the derailment went out at about 1:15 a.m. The Nantes Fire Department was called to help. Now, as the Nantes firefighters drove down the highway towards Lac-Megantic for the big call, they looked at the scene they had just been to 45 minutes earlier, and the train wasn't here. They were extremely surprised by that because of the condition they'd left it in.
Honestly, I couldn't believe that the train had left, but when we came by, we noticed the train was gone. That's when we realized that something really wrong had happened.
We took what we know to someone with experience. We asked this 30-year veteran engineer whether putting out the fire could have affected the brakes.
It could have if someone entered that engine and it was connected to the train, and during the course of that fire and the air was hooked up from the engine to the train, if someone inadvertently bumped the train air brake valve in the engine, it would have released, it could have released the brakes.
The Transportation Safety Board confirms they have recovered the locomotive event recorder, the so-called black box. As it turns out, the locomotives actually came right through the blast radius and weren't affected. So TSB investigators have been able to go in, get the information from the black box, even look at the dash. So they have a lot of information to go with. In fact, they had another recorder at the back of the train, tons to go over. They also have a lot of interviews to do, including anyone who saw that first fire up the tracks. Donna?
All right, Mike Armstrong, thanks.